ask you another couple random questions, and we're going to wrap this up. If you sold Stripe right now for some ungodly amount of money, and you had to sign a non-compete, you can't compete in the industry, and you got to take 6 months off, and then we're going to give you 20 million pounds to go do something else, what would you do?
Interesting.
Could you take 6 months off? That's a question. Some people can't take vacations.
No, I can take vacations.
Okay.
Go flying.
Yeah.
But no, there's a. I think there's so many things that I want to say that sound like cliches because they're like the hot topics. But for example, I think drones are legitimately pretty interesting. I know. A handful of people now who are running like drone startups, and the really interesting things about drones is like there are so many things that the drones are like bringing the internet into the real world. In that it's kind of crazy that I mean, trivial example, if you're like a cattle farmer, you can't just be like, where are my cattle? And that's something that is like impossible to answer, and that's one of the places that the internet has not pervaded. And so one of the companies I know that's doing drone stuff is doing like a lot of it is agriculture, where it's like surveying and things like that, or they're doing it in industry for mining or anti-poaching or all this kind of stuff. And so it's like there's so much data online, and you can do so much stuff. Like Google can crawl the web, but you can't like crawl the real world, and that was previously extremely inefficient. Anti-poaching, the way it worked was like two guys in a Cessna like flying around the country, and they would maybe spot a poacher occasionally, but there was like so much that went uncaught. And so the idea behind drones is you're like gathering more and more data, and you can have these like kind of very cheap devices out there in the world, like connected to the internet, recording or doing something like that. And so I think that's a good example of just like a really interesting trend that is happening before us. I mean, there's also the scary surveillance aspect of drones.
Yeah, just that word makes everyone kind
So I was going to say, for the ones who are, because you get a lot of listeners at London Real who are international, who are not necessarily tech. So anyone who tunes into this, just want to clarify, we're not talking about military drones.
Yeah, we could be.
We're talking about the small kind of quadcopter.
So a drone is, I mean, the colloquial word for an unmanned aircraft, and so you have the military unmanned aircraft which shoot you from the sky, and then you have the like any other kind of like unmanned robotic aircraft, and they're getting pretty small these days. You have drones the size of like a dinner plate, and a pretty common one is a multi-rotor, like a quadricopter, where you have like these 4 separate ones.
I got one of those,
and they're pretty good aircraft.
We had a guy drink about with one last week, actually.
Oh, really?
2 weeks ago, he was at the front flying it around. Yeah.
And I think the thing about drones that will have to evolve is that in the US there are like very clear kind of expectations around what's private and what's not in the real world. Like there's all this precedent in case law that like a police officer can't enter your house without a warrant. But like that took time for people to develop the concept of like where are the boundaries and like what's and then cars came along, and now a police officer can like look inside the windows of your vehicle, but they can't like get you to open the trunk without a warrant because that's like a private space. But like the back seat of your car isn't a private space, and we've developed all these kind of understandings of like what the expectations are as these new things develop. And I think in the online world, I mean, as we've seen with all the NSA stuff, we still haven't like there's like whatever you think, there is a clear mismatch of expectations here, where like people expect the government to not be collecting all data that goes over the wire, and I mean, yeah, and I think similarly with drones, there's like the very scary aspect of like, okay, now there's like so much more surveillance happening. I think that's like fundamentally not a bad thing. It's just like we need better expectations.
Okay.
But anyway, so I think drones are interesting. I could see myself doing something there, but I mean, I also just like really like planes and things, so that may just be a puerile fascination with like things that go flying.
A flying head.
Really interesting about the London community, I find, is there's a lot of camaraderie.
Entrepreneurs for government, they're really hacking the system.
Could be a little like that. And you're talking about like free flow of ideas.